like to welcome everybody out for our commission meeting on this, the second day of November 2016. If everyone would please rise and repeat the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like everybody to be patient with our new surroundings for this one commission meeting. Seems to be an election happening. We have a full agenda today, so we'll get right into it. First on the agenda, we have a video presentation from the Utah Office of Energy Development.
You know, Commissioner Hoax, while we're waiting, and it looks like we're up, but this was produced by the Governor's Office of Energy Development, and it tells an excellent story of energy and success stories. It's one of those that we've asked our IT department to put on our Facebook, our internet, website. And I'd encourage you to share it with others because it tells a true story of energy, particularly coal. And I think that we can use it to tell the other side of the story.
It is no secret that Utah has one of the top performing economies in our country. And what many people don't know, though, is that is really fueled by the fact that we have affordable, reliable, secure, clean energy here in the state of Utah. And much of that comes from coal, which also happens to be Utah's state rock. In fact, coal provides about 75% of the electricity provided here in the state of Utah. And that production is really important as we look to build our overall economic growth. And it creates jobs in the state. About 2,000 high-paying jobs are the result of our coal industry right here in Utah.
SUFCO is one of the oldest coal mines in the United States and certainly the oldest continuously operated underground coal mine in the western part of the United States. We produce enough energy here on a very small footprint to provide about half of what Utah needs for electricity. Here at SUFCO we have two different mining processes. One, continuous miner, where we drive entries that are necessary to enter the coal seam, set up a panel or access the coal, set up panels for longwall, and then longwall is the other method that is an extraction at this mine of 1,110 feet of coal across the panel for the length of a panel.
So what we do is we set this up in a block of coal, and the shear runs back and forth along this face here and cuts the coal out of the seam here and puts it on the pan and ships it outside. We cut anywhere from 18, 19 to 30,000 tons a day with this machine in a 24-hour period.
We have one of the best safety records at this mine in the entire world.
We believe at SUFCO that if you see something wrong, anybody, it doesn't matter what your position, you can stop the operation, you can stop the project, you can stop the task to make sure that it's done safely.
So it's very important to our employees, very important to the local economy, very important to the state of Utah to keep places like this running, to provide energy, provide jobs. We've got to do whatever we can to protect operations like this so they can survive.
We have a lot of people that this coal mine affects, and makes us very proud to come to work knowing we have that effect on this state and this community.
Here at the Hunter Power Plant, we receive coal from the local mines. On any given day, we may have 600 truckloads that comes to the plant. We have the capacity to generate 1,363 megawatts. The Hunter plant has 3 units. The first unit came online in 1978. And over that time, the Hunter Power Plant has been a reliable source of cost-effective electric energy to hundreds of thousands of residential and manufacturing or wholesale customers. PacifiCorp is a great environmental steward. They are very much concerned about the environment. There are 3 major retrofits that we've made at the Hunter plant. We've installed equipment to reduce SOx, or sulfur oxide emissions. We've installed equipment to reduce nitrogen oxide emissions. And we've also installed or retrofitted equipment to reduce particulate emissions. We as employees and we as a company, we're users of the environment, and we want to have a clean environment.
The Division of Oil, Gas and Mining has a 3-part mission: to foster the responsible development of our natural resources, to protect the health and safety of the public, and to preserve the environment. A big part of that environmental preservation is final reclamation, which occurred at Desby Dove and won a national award for the quality of that work from the U.S. Office of Surface Mining.
We try to reclaim our lands to as good or better condition that they originally were when we started mining. The mine is divided into an upper seam and lower seam. So when we began our reclamation in 2001, we reclaimed the upper mine first. We gathered soils from digging pits, and then again we started the reclamation of the lower seam in 2002. That's when we had to completely remove the coal that was stored in the canyon out of the canyon. You look at it today and we see small mammals, we see deer tracks. It's basically returned back to its natural state.
Clearly, Utah's low sulfur, high BTU content coal has played a critical part of Utah's energy landscape. But there are challenges today on continuing to use coal. But we believe that coal can be a fundamental and critical part of our energy future, continuing to provide value to that energy landscape as well as our overall economy. And so how are we going to do that? We're going to do it through innovation. And Utah is really demonstrating leadership with companies right here in the state, looking at how we can capture carbon, how we can do biofuel firing so that we can lower overall emissions, and how we can generally improve the efficiencies of our coal plants here in the state of Utah. In fact, the University of Utah currently has a $16.5 million grant to deliver on this mission.
We are at University of Utah's Industrial Combustion and Gasification Research Facility. This is a world-class facility where we have pilot-scale combustors and gasifiers. And at this facility, we have 8 large units that we perform research on. We are doing experiments today on 2 different advanced coal combustion technologies. And the purposes of both of these technologies is to eventually get to full-scale installation of a coal-fired utility boiler where we have 0 emission, meaning no CO2 emission and no other pollutant emission. In more recent years, in the last decade, we've retrofit this unit with advanced combustion technology that allows us to separate CO2 out. We continue to push the envelope on the type of combustion that we're able to run in this unit. When you decide, or we decided as a society, that we want to limit the emissions from coal-fired utility boilers or remove CO2, obviously we have to pay for that in some way. And we typically do that in terms of energy penalties or efficiency penalties. And our purpose here is to develop technology that reduces those penalties as much as possible.
Sustainable Energy Solutions is a company that is developing a cryogenic carbon capture technology that affordably cleans the emissions coming out of coal-fired power plants and other fossil-fueled industrial sources of CO2. We actually freeze the CO2 and the other things out of the gas,
and that's how we separate them. So everybody knows that when you get something cold enough, it'll freeze. That's not very innovative, but doing that in an energy efficient way is one of the keys to our technology. Fossil fuels and renewables aren't competing with each other. They don't need to compete with each other. We need to come up with solutions, not just point fingers, and this technology is one way that we can do that.
The impact globally of those technologies could be transformational in really enabling the world now to use the world's fossil energy resources in ways that are going to be, ways that are going to maintain the quality of our air, our water, and our climate.
Emitting CO2 is not a problem that's just local. Once it gets into the atmosphere, it can go anywhere, and it stays there for a very long time. So when we talk about technologies that reduce CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, we can only make an impact if everybody in the world is going to participate.
If you kind of do the math, coal will continue to be used for, I believe, at least decades into the future. We need to figure out how to use that resource in a way that makes sense, not only for us, but for the future of our children, our grandchildren, and the planet.
That's that's a great video. There was a study done by a professor out of the University of Arizona that did he called it the true cost of going green, and we're not competing with renewables. I think they all play their role, but everything we do, if we go green, there is a cost of mining the copper, and everything drives. There are drivers to all of the resources that we need to either do renewables or to do coal-fired power. So as we look at the different energies and the things that we're trying to do in our communities, we have to be aware that there's place for all of them if we do them right and if we're good stewards and take care of the things that we have. Anything else, Commissioners? Item number 2, approval of minutes. We don't have any minutes. Item number 3, County Employee of the Month, Rose Barnes. Sure.
Commissioners, actually it's Department of the Month this month instead of Employee of the Month, and it's the North Spring Shooting Range. And Ben Cormack from GIS has nominated them, and I'm going to let him say some words, but it's an awesome facility out there. For those people who have never gone out there, it is truly an amazing venue to visit. So I would recommend anyone to go out there. They treat you with such, they make you feel at ease. They it's a fun place to go. They make you feel welcome. Makes you feel like you're just part of a family out there. So I personally would like to thank all these guys because they do a good job out there.
Yeah, Commissioners, I was originally going to suggest that this award be given to the staff of the North Spring Shooting Range because they dedicated my son Zach's favorite range to his memory. And while that is a very momentous gesture and one that will never be forgotten, I was thinking about what I should say today. I realized that really isn't why we're here today. Today is really about a celebration of having a fine facility, a gratitude to staff that takes great care of it. But when it comes right down to it, what brought us here today was the fact that these fine gentlemen have never treated me and my family as anything less than they would treat their own families. About fact checking that their families weren't available for comment. The fact is that this seeming small and maybe not so common days is at the root of this whole event. And I realized that maybe if events in my life had gone differently, I might not have ever taken the opportunity to recognize that. So I issue a challenge that we all, as the saying modified goes, never miss an opportunity to recognize kindness. And as the more famous saying goes, now I will not miss the opportunity to shut up.
Just take just a second to thank Scott and Adam and Dane. I've had the pleasure of being their supervisor for the last couple of years, and we've really done some great things to improve the range. They are working on a shoestring budget, as we all are, and we've been able to get more out of them and more out of the events, and we're looking to expand things at the range. So if there are people in the audience that has not been to the North Springs shooting range, I suggest you go out. Scott will let you take a tour for free. Bring a firearm, and we're open Thursday through Sunday from dawn to dusk. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate what you guys do. They're good employees. Deserved, well deserved.
I'd like to say just a little bit more. As we've had different events where we've brought people from the state, the CIB, GOED, the Office of or Governor's Office of Economic Development, and different things. The North Springs Shooting Range is one of those venues that we take them to, and they've always done a fantastic job. They've gone out of their way to make sure that everything is ready and prepared, and they do all the loading and unloading for those different events, and people go away saying, wow, that is just a top-notch venue, and that's because of you guys. Thank you.
By the way, indoor archery starts tomorrow night at the event center in, 3:30 out? 4:30. So indoor archery. Thanks, man.
Item number 4, presentation of check to the United Way of Southeastern Utah for the Breast Cancer Awareness Softball Tournament and the International Days 5K Run. Frank Gorey.
So this was a team effort. You guys, come on up. Last year, come on, Rochelle. 2 years ago, Rochelle Badback, who has been an integral part of different things at Carbon Rec throughout the years, asked if we would be interested in helping out a young lady who was diagnosed with breast cancer and had some expenses. And so we jumped in, and I think we raised $3,500 last year. At that point, we decided that in the future we would dedicate the second weekend to in October to breast cancer awareness, and we would try and raise as much money as possible for that cause. We actually have 2 checks to present to the United Way because we co-sponsor our International Days 5K run, and I think they called it the Run with Scissors 5K this year. So that was pretty clever by Terry Willis. Our goal was $5,000, and we had people from the college baseball team, from the Sun Center, come and donate their day. They kept score. They umpired. We had people from different organizations. The United Way, some of my staff donated their time, and we were able to raise. We came a little bit short. We were a total of, after we had a few expenses, we raised $4,644.50. So if you take the $405 that we raised for the 5K, it pushes us back over 5,000. So we are very proud, and we have Carol White. From Sutherland's. I think he has like an open checkbook, I swear. If I call Wayne, he's going to give me something. He doesn't, and he answers still. So we appreciate Wayne Sutherland's. I'm sorry, sir. Great cook. From the hospital. Cassidy Hospital has been a great supporter of everything. Terry from the Sun Center, he provided the scorekeepers and the umpires, and this young lady also with the Sun Center. And then just the group of people. So Carol, we just wanted to come over and present this check to you. And this will be donated to the Live Love Local Cancer Fund. We're going to make a goal to try and at least raise $5,000 for you every year on that second Saturday in October. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Frank has always been so supportive. We're very grateful for Frank between the 5K and this. And this is members of our executive board and board of directors, and I'm grateful for them. And of course, Ro here donated all of her time for the concessions.
Right. I forgot about that, sorry.
No. Well, this community truly does show what it is to live united, and we're very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5, open sealed bids for 2017 chip seal projects. Seth.
Commissioners, we received 2 bids. One did not come sealed. It's from Howard Reese General Contractors. And that was at $25.50 a ton for chip seal material. And then we received, this seal bid is from Ute Light. So for the chip type A, it's $32.45 cubic yard, and chip type C, which is $32.45 cubic yard as well. That is from FOB, the Ute Light Corporation in Wanship, Utah. No. So those are the 2 items that we've received.
Christian, how do we handle the one that's not sealed? Is that an
Well,
issue for us?
I'm not sure that that's an issue. If it came in an envelope, didn't it, Seth? No, it came via fax. By fax. What did our bid? I'd have to see what our bid notice said on it.
Fax bids are not accepted.
Yeah.
But I guess we'd have to disqualify that one. And then we have to decide, that leaves us only though with 1 bid, and that bid is not satisfactory. You're not required to accept it. You could go out again for another set of bids, or seek to privately find a firm. Now that you've gone public with the notice and tried to do it publicly and competitively, our procurement code does allow us to try and find another person, or we can simply accept the bid that was received.
Daniel, have you ever done business with Ute Light before?
Yep, that's who we did business through last year. Had great success, so we had better than 99% retention of our chips.
Do you feel that we need to put out for bid again? Just
I don't. We only received 1 bid last year. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the price.
Is the price comparable to what it was last year?
Commissioners, if you don't have any other questions, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, what was the motion?
Well, my motion is just that we acknowledge the bid and that we turn it over to the road shop for further review, making sure that it meets all the specs that we need, and allow them to accept it or bring it back to us if there's something missing.
Okay.
I would like to add, due to using these chips last year, it saved us over $90,000
chip seal projects last year. So, with the success we've had with them, I would really like to continue using them.
Okay.
Second is still.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 6, road and flood issues in Spring Glen. Stephen Richardson. Is Stephen here?
I don't see him.
No, this was one that we had rescheduled at his request. I'll make a motion that we just go ahead and table that, see if he wants to put it back on the next agenda.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 7, 40-acre land acquisition in Carbon County by Utah Division of Wildlife Resources, DWR.
Good evening. I give a map. Do you mind if I give commissioners the map of the
Yes, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I'm Chris Wood. I'm with the Division of Wildlife Resources. I'm the regional supervisor for the southeastern part of the state. Up here with me is Jeff Cook. We would just like to come before the commission and let you make you aware of a purchase agreement that our agency has entered in with Mr. Cook. We intend to buy 40 acres of land at our Lower Fish Creek Wildlife Management Area. It's the map, you look at the map, the star, the little asterisks, that's the 40-acre parcel that we are hoping to acquire. As you can see by the map, it's completely surrounded by Division of Wildlife property. This piece of land is managed and owned for the public. We own it for hunting and fishing and recreation, and it's a great piece of land that deer and elk summer on, and usually you can find some deer and elk during the hunts. It's also a piece of land that is good for sage-grouse. It's part of identified in several of the sage-grouse plans that we have in the state and the county. I can answer any questions you have, or Mr. Cook can use any of these things.
They just kind of wanted me to come and say that I wanted to sell it, and that I bought it, and there was a rough road into it, but it kind of closed that road down, so that makes sense for me to sell it and try to acquire land.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should have mentioned that there is no legal access to this 40 acres of land, so it really has no potential to be developed in the future, and therefore we've come to an agreement to buy this piece and allow it to be part of the bigger wildlife management area.
Chris, so access to all of the property obviously isn't impacted by this, but I'm assuming from either the dam down or from the bottom side up, recreation property.
It's actually access through a road. It's a county road over by the Colton Bridge. It's a county road all the way up to the uplands, and then there's also a county road to the bottom to the Lower Fish Creek river access area. And so recreationists hunt the upland areas for deer and elk, and then they can drive down on the county road to fish great fishing under the bottom.
As I look at the map, there is a road that goes fairly close to that piece of property.
Yeah, it's within like 100 feet, and there used to be a little rough road to go to it, but they closed the rough road off, so. But it's the main road.
Would there be any availability of granting an access to that property?
As an agency, we don't grant access to properties, to our properties. It devalues our property, and so as a general rule statewide, we don't grant access.
The only reason I ask is sometimes, and what funding are you using to pay for this?
That's a good question. Daniel, do you know that answer? I do not know that answer. I can get back to you though.
The only reason I ask is sometimes the DWR, and I'm not faulting you guys, but have bought properties and taking them off the tax rolls through the Lee Ray McAllister Fund, which takes property away from, one, the tax rolls, and two, the availability of people to own those properties. This one has a little bit of a different circumstance where it's completely surrounded by your area there. And I don't know that there's much we can. Okay.
I can double check them if you'd like. Familiar with those funds. We usually tap into those to buy conservation easements. I haven't seen us buy property with those funds in the 10 years I've worked in this county. So.
Okay.
Well, just as an opportunity to represent the citizens' best interest, we have Rex Sacco, who's our public lands guy, in the room. We also have Todd Thorne over planning and zoning. I don't know if either of you two would like to make any comment on this, any concerns that the citizens or public should have in this transaction.
I don't have any comments. I know where the land is. We run cows up there on DWR.
It doesn't sound like there should be any. Yeah, it doesn't sound like there should be any concern, but just validating from.
I knew there would be an issue when DWR bought that property because there was basically a right of way in there, and after they bought that property, the first thing they did was make sure that nobody could actually utilize it.
You're speaking from a prior transaction.
Yeah, I know what happened. I know what came up with that.
Okay.
This land was acquired in a few different transactions. The second transaction happened in the last 5 years. The big square section, the 640 section, was acquired through a trade with the school institutional trust lands. And so we acquired that, which landlocked that 40 acres of private. That was done. We had a statewide trade. We traded a bunch of sections throughout the state for some of our property that we owned in the Salt Lake County area that we wanted to develop and make money from. So.
Well, Chris, thank you for.
I don't think we have any action on this, do we?
No, just appreciate you coming and informing the public.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8, review and possible approval, possible ratification for contractor selection for Carbon County Canal Diversion EWP projects. Justin Needles.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So I don't know exactly what what needs to happen, but as part of the EWP process, it states in the agreement we have with NRCS that we must follow all protocols for purchasing and everything else. So this is to make you ratify or make you guys aware of how the process went for that project. Jones and DeMille Engineering has been working on the new Carbon Canal stand diversion up by the golf course. The engineering is out for review of the NRCS. They put out to bid the actual project itself. They received sealed bids back to them. In a meeting that I was at, and Casey was at the part of it, they opened the sealed bids. We reviewed them with some of the Carbon Canal, I don't know what they call them. Board, and then they made who they would like to issue this to. I believe it's already been awarded, but this is to show you guys the numbers. So at that meeting, there were 4 contractors that placed bids. First was Nilsen Construction, at a total project cost of $1,274,191. Gerber Construction out of Lehi, Utah was $1,751,860. Whitaker Construction out of Brigham City was $1,895,970. And Flair Construction out of Colville, Utah was $2,190,598, and they did go with the low bid of Nilsen Construction and awarded it to them. I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be done, but it was brought to you guys for that.
Justin, I know that I asked you this previously, but just for the record, was there any concern with Nilsen's bid being so much lower than everybody else's?
No. There was a lot of discussion at that meeting over who to use, and it wasn't so much based based a lot on other projects they've done. I know Gerber Construction did the big project that was the Green River Diversion project, and they really liked what they did. But because Nielsen was able to go so much lower, they didn't have the cost of mobilizing everything here that all these other companies from up north did. So that's why the price is so much lower.
Location drives a lot of that cost from the outside companies.
Yeah, the other thing, just so that everybody understands too, is that Carbon County is acting as the agent in this. We are not funding that. There is some in kind, but that's coming from various sources. But this is definitely for these water projects that have been already approved.
That is correct. So the cost for these projects, to remind everyone, the NRCS funds them at a 75% match. So the host agency has to pay 25%, but we have a sub-agreement with the Carbon Canal. They will pay that 25%, and we are just the host agency, and the NRCS will pay the other 75%. So Carbon County itself is not paying for any of these costs. That is all coming from the canal company and NRCS themselves.
Very good.
Commissioner,
Okay.
with respect to the way the agenda item reads, I don't think you need to ratify this decision because the contract our agreement with Carbon Canal Company gave them the authority to award the contract. It put the burden on them to select the contractor, weigh all the different factors. You weren't really involved in that, so I don't think you need to take responsibility one way or the other than to
Acknowledge.
that it does appear they followed our procurement code and their own procurement code and selected the low bid and who they believe would do the best job. So I think we can simply acknowledge that they've done that. But I don't think any ratification is required, and I wouldn't recommend you ratify anything since you weren't part of that selection process.
Okay.
Thank you, Justin.
So I'll make the motion that we acknowledge their decision.
That's fine.
We have a motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 9, consideration and possible approval of renewed mineral rights lease agreement with Western Reserve Coal, Inc.
Commissioners, I've been speaking with the proprietor of Western Reserve Coal, who is Greg Hunt. As you know, he is asking that a few years ago, we came to an agreement, or this commission, about 5 years ago, agreed that if we got to 2017 and no production had occurred on this property, that the lease rate was going to basically double and the royalty rate was going to go up. He is asking that you consider leaving the lease rate at the same rate that it was, which was 50 cents, I believe, per ton. Production ever should start. Basically, Commissioners, my request is that you table this and not put it back on the agenda until we've had some time to work that out. I'd like to talk with each of you and get your recommendations as to what that rate would be. We could discuss that tonight. My sense is I don't know that any of us have a sense of what that rate really should be given our current markets. Maybe some of you do, maybe there are people around who do. I'm just a little bit worried about entering into a long-term lease agreement where we set a royalty rate that we haven't had sufficient time to investigate as to what it should really be. So I'd recommend we table this. The lease expires in March of next year. That gives us plenty of time to look at it, but I think once we know what we want to assess, we can quickly just plug that number into the contract form that we have. So my request, or my recommendation, would be that you table this until we've sorted through what you would like the royalty rate to be.
I'll go ahead and make that motion that we table this at this time.
And I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 10, consideration and possible ratification of an agreement with Verizon Wireless to participate in cell phones for victims of crime program, Hopeline program. Christian, I guess you're speaking for Dina tonight.
Commissioners, this is a program that costs the county absolutely nothing. It's a charitable program run by Verizon Wireless, which allows victims of crimes to receive a free cell phone at no cost to them with a certain number of, the limited number of minutes. It's a new number they have that they can decide to give out to whom they wish so that they can kind of start anew. They have a certain number of cell phone minutes, a new cell phone number. They get that phone until the minutes are gone or they don't need it anymore. And it lets them stay in contact with the people they need to stay in contact with, including the county attorney's office, so that we can always track them down as a trial approaches or sentencing or that type of thing. There's basically little or no risk to the county in this, but it did require us to agree to allow our sheriff's office to go ahead and receive those phones and in their discretion assign them to the victims who need those. So on behalf of the sheriff's office, we ask that you ratify that agreement that they've entered into with Verizon.
Well, I think this is a wonderful thing, and it facilitates not only, as you mentioned, the sheriff's office, but the attorneys as well. And so I'll go ahead and make that motion that we ratify the agreement that was made with Verizon Wireless.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 11, review and possible approval of infrastructure agreement with Emory Telecom Barrie.
Commissioners, I believe you've been able to chance to review the agreement with Emory Telecom to provide fiber optic infrastructure for county use. We use this to be able to connect this to all the offsites to this main location, and also we use them for 911 as well. Carbon County was a lead in being able to do what we do with 911 and being able to make it more redundant, and so that was through the help of Emory Telecom as well. But what you see is an agreement that actually started previous to this, and so there's some back cost associated with it, and then a future term of 10 years.
Commissioners, as I was talking to Barry before the meeting about this, I would like to make a couple of minor changes. If you look at paragraph 4, it says, this is on the third page, but it says the term of the agreement shall be for 10 years. I'd like to change that to state the term of the agreement shall be for 10 years commencing with the date that it's entered into. The reason why is there's some recitation of some language in here that talks about a verbal agreement that was adhered to but not ever formally memorialized for the previous 5 years. We want to make it clear exactly that the term of this agreement is for 10 years commencing now. And so I'd like to just change that first sentence there to say shall be for 10 years from the date of the execution of this agreement. We also have on the first page it talks about some of the buildings from which we're running the fiber. The 7th District Court building, actually that should be I believe that's the Sheriff's Office or APP that's using the old planning and zoning building there next to it.
The Drug Task Force, yeah.
That's right. So we want to replace that. It's not actually the 7th District Court building. We need to correctly identify that. Otherwise, I think the numbers are okay. The terms of it are okay. Maybe Barry and I can just go through it one more time with a fine-tooth comb and just make sure there aren't any ambiguities. But beyond those changes, I'm not aware of any others that need to be made. But we do want to be very certain that this is a 10-year term starting now. And we want that to be very clear.
Barry, you've been working on this for over a year. Are you satisfied with where we are? I mean, the numbers look very similar to things we've talked about in other meetings and in the public, so.
Correct. I am pleased with where this is headed. Emory Telecom's been a great partner in helping us accomplish some things. This is going to open the door to other possible agreements to connect other sites with them. So I feel confident that this is a good thing for the county.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention, Commissioners, and that is this, if you look on the 4th page under section 3C where it says maintenance price, in the middle of that paragraph, we've indicated that the county is receiving a waiver, or receiving a waiver of $1,000 due to the county granting Emory Telecom a blanket encroachment permit for its company. We've done blanket encroachment permits with other entities in the past. It's my understanding that we haven't had any problems with Emory Telecom with respect to encroachments in the past. I think they've been done individually, but this contract contemplates and refers to a separate agreement that would be the grant Emory Telecom a blanket encroachment permit for our roads. I've spoken with Daniel about that. He doesn't have a problem with the amount there or with them having that kind of permit given their good behavior and cooperation with us in the past and willingness to, according to Daniel, they do a fine job whenever they cut into our roads and fix those back up, and we haven't had any problems. But I did want you to be aware that it does make reference to that separate agreement. So we'll be finalizing that most likely soon.
Christian, in regards to that separate agreement, the way it reads here, it sounds like as it's agreed upon yearly, if I understand that correct.
Yes.
And so if at any time we have any issue, we can always make a change within a relatively short period of time.
Right.
Okay.
And by being a blanket encroachment permit, does that allow them to put fiber wherever they want to in county right-of-ways, or is it just crossing? Like if they're crossing one of our right-of-ways, does that allow them to cross it without paying the fees?
Well, as I read this, it would allow them to do whatever we decide to allow them to do. It's going to allow them to do it without a fee.
I believe they already have the right to be within the county right of way due to the term.
They have the right to be in there because of our public. If it's a public right of way, generally utilities are free to use that. The question is, but generally that means, though, it doesn't mean use it anywhere and everywhere.
Right.
I mean, we get to direct where that's going to go, and generally we like it along the edges. But so the encroachment permit really just governs the cutting of it and where they put it. So yeah, the terms of that, I don't know. My understanding is whatever we're going to let them do, they're not going to have to pay for doing that. So we might want to spell that out in the permit as to what kinds of cuts would be allowed and where they'd be allowed to place that. The alternative could be to execute that permit, that blanket encroachment agreement, the same time you authorize this agreement. I don't know to what extent Barry is excited to wait any longer to get this done. But I haven't talked to anybody with them. I don't know what the terms of that would be.
Christian, in regards to the separate agreement, should that go through the Planning Commission?
I don't know that it would need to. It could. We've done several of these blanket encroachment agreements, and basically, as I recall, it lets them make simple cuts without any charge. And if I recall further, I think a lot of them say if you're going to do an extensive cut, then you do have to get a separate, you have to call out the road department. They have to come out and look at it, and there might be an additional fee.
And we have to be underneath all of our structures. And we can't damage any of our structures, culverts, bridges, any of that. And then they're responsible for any of their crossings or borings. If we have any settlement or any of that, they're responsible for all the maintenance on it, plus traffic control. And they've been good in the past, even with that blanket permit, of calling and saying, hey, we're planning on doing this, come out and meet with us. Jeff Keel's been great. We go through the project. And anything that we point out at that time, we put down on paper, and before they give final approval with their contractor, they make sure we install
basically, I do think we could set that encroachment, that blanket encroachment agreement to say it's only going to cover certain types of encroachments. It's only going to cover those types of things. The concern is, you know, is Emory Telecom expecting more than that? You know, are they expecting, well, gee, we thought this granted us license to do whatever we wanted in your roadway, right? They might read this and say, well, I thought that's what that was going to be. So I put in the terms, it would be set forth in a separate written encroachment agreement, so that we're not, so that nobody can imply by this agreement that it's going to, that there may not be special conditions. This to me implies, yeah, you need to refer to that separate agreement to determine what the conditions are going to be under which you can make that encroachment. So I think we're okay if we sign it like this, but there's been no discussion with them about the term of the encroachment agreement. So when this contract came to us, the original language that Emory Telecom put in there was a construction permit. Well, we don't have, I mean, that's not a term we use, and it didn't really mean anything. And as I read this, I'm sure what they're thinking is an encroachment permit. There's been no discussion yet regarding that as far as a blanket permit.
If the commission would be more comfortable waiting for that encroachment permit, maybe Christian and I could draft that and have that prepared for the next meeting, and then it would be clear as to what this agreement is contingent upon.
And that's always the safer, more conservative course. And, unless we're under a time crunch, that's the course I recommend.
I think after the few years I've worked with it,
I'd be in favor, personally, of having it wait until the full document is prepared.
Until we make, and of course you're going to be speaking with them to verify that they're fine with that. So I'll go ahead and make that motion that we table this until the document is prepared, and the corrections to this document as mentioned are also made.
We have a motion.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 12, review and possible approval of proposed Board of Equal Adjustments. Seth Ovison.
Commissioners, in the past commission meeting, we had you approve the appeals as recommended by the hearing office for the Board of Equalization. At that time, we had 9 parcels that were not included because they were still going through gathering information. Those have been provided. It should be in your packet. On top of that, there are additional, with the flooding in Wellington, they had the opportunity to appeal based on the natural disaster. We received 4 appeals. 3 of them qualified for reduction in value as well. So those are there for your approval, and I recommend that you approve those so that we can make modifications to the tax notices where they have to pay their taxes.
I'll go ahead and make that motion that we approve those adjustments through the Board of Equalization.
You have a motion?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 13, discussion and possible discussion on proposal for recycling center at county landfill. Green team.
Good evening, Commissioners. On behalf of the Green Team Recycling Team of Carbon County, we want to first of all thank you. First of all, introduce ourselves. I'm Jim Giacchitelli, if we've met before, and this is Chelsea Roberts, who's one of our board members, one of 3 other board members of the Green Team. So we wanted to thank you first of all for your efforts in the past to help recycling go forth in the county. We're aware that efforts to recycle tires and efforts to recycle concrete and salvage metals. We commend you for that. Our purpose tonight, of course, course, is to thank you for meeting with us prior to this meeting and overlooking the detailed proposal which we presented and discussing that with us. And so tonight we just wanted to highlight the benefits of that for you and for others present here. Open that up to further discussion and comment and hopefully action. So we'll go ahead and do that. So here are the benefits that we see. First of all, the proposal capitalizes on existing resources. Those currently exist at over $50,000. That includes, of course, the trailers that are present. We have recently acquired trailers in Eastern Utah USU, and the Forest Service in the county. So, as well as things that the county already has in terms of at the landfill, the land, which is very appropriate for this type of resource. It, of course, as recycling extends the landfill life and saves residents over $21 per ton of every recycled materials that are recycled. And then it provides maximum benefit for a relatively small investment. And of course, as you're well familiar with, return on investment. We think that that's something that really needs to be underscored, and we want to encourage you to do that. The last and perhaps the most important of all benefits is that it benefits all residents, those of any age and all interests, and encourages a spirit and word toward a cleaner, healthier, and more vibrant and progressive county. So that's pretty well what we'd have to say, and I want to open that up for further discussion, comment, etc. That's pretty well summarized too, I think, by this little chart, pictures, pictorial summation of what we have. These are the pictures from recently taken out of the landfill. You can see large amounts of cardboard there. This is our trailer. I'm sure that one of the 11 trailers that we have currently in operation here. Here is the bale cardboard that we recently shipped to Salt Lake. And here's a picture of our operation, which we've recently had out at Loveless Ash, just to illustrate that it's a clean operation. Eyesore to the community.
Jim, just for the record, what could you explain what you're asking of the county? You talked about providing an area for the recycling, unloading and loading of the bins and things. Would you kind of explain that for the public to be able to hear?
Sure. Well, the experience has been in the past that those who've dealt with these types of things, that recycling centers are best located near a landfill because that's where all the other salvaging is taking place. So we're asking the county for that space. There is space out there. We've tried to highlight that in some of our pictures that we've taken and presented to you. That's the larger part of it. Then also we've asked that there, in that space, there be a place for us to load a trailer and maybe down the line have a loading dock. Use of a forklift, which would take the materials out of the trailers and load them into the trailer. That trailer would be provided by some of our currently used transfer people, Interwells Paper, Rocky Mountain Recycling. We've discussed and thrown out before discussion the use of county employees to pull the trailers back in. to the landfill and then return them.
When we had that discussion the other day, your comment was that you were trying to talk to the salvage company to perform those services, which was using their forklift and their manpower to grab the trailers and take them back.
We have thrown that out as either or to the county or to the business, but yes, to the businesses was the first option. Have spoken also with Richard Stevenson, and he supported the proposal as written.
In which way?
As it is written.
As the county performing those
Yes.
functions, and that's where, for me, it becomes a little more difficult, because you're taking man hours off of whatever department it is to go out and retrieve those trailers. And we talked about that from Helper. If you were to grab the one that's out in Helper and bring it to Price, you're an hour one-way travel to go get the trailer and bring it back and unload it. So half an hour. So you're looking at an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for the changing out of the stuff. And that's why when we had talked, it was that you were going to have the salvage company performing that.
Yes, we've talked about that, and that's still open. There are other options too. We've presented that to Helper City as well, to Mr. Harwood, and they're going to discuss that tomorrow night in their council meeting. Them bringing the trailer in from Helper, and I don't know if we discussed that yet, Mr. Davis, with Price City and the proposal they're possibly helping us.
No, I have not presented that to the council. It would have to be agreed upon by the council what type of agreement we would have with the county in order to do that. But it's certainly something that
And it looks like we have a lot of representatives from the college as well. Carrie Arkard was one of my professors. Fantastic. If you're going to school. So maybe there's some other partnerships that we can utilize. Maybe even the school district. I know Chelsea has her own trailer that nobody else can touch. That was very clear in that meeting. So maybe there's some other partnerships that would help alleviate it, so it's not just the county, but maybe the school district, the counties, the city, and everybody has some of that responsibility. Most of the residents in the county do live in the cities, and so I think if we're all partnered here, I think that might be an easier way to go about this.
Right, and from previous experience, Commissioner Hopes, I can tell you that your estimation is pretty liberal on those things. If it's done right, it can cut down quite a bit on those figures you gave us. Plus, you have to realize that the amount of time those trailers cycle is about every 5 weeks you're picking up one.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not a big, intensive operation.
Well, the only thing that I see about that is you may only pick up one trailer a day, but that takes one guy that can't go out and start his job immediately for the day. If it were the road shop, the guys are given their assignments first thing in the morning, and a lot of times they're working as a whole crew on a specific job or a couple different crews. So I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying there are some logistics that would have to be worked out.
Right, and I appreciate your concerns and feel like those are well founded. However, again, from previous experience, we've been able to do this with Loveless, and we've been able to do it because largely we've been able to have lead time to give them time when they could help out on it. So again, the keys are coordinating it, working as a team. It's certainly a doable thing. So.
Jim, just to clarify some of the hesitation that you might be feeling today, as stewards of our taxpayers' money, we have to make sure that we're making decisions that are in their best interest. In researching some of what we spoke about when you met with me, some of the businesses that have participated in the past who no longer participate have done so because it became too burdensome for them, whether it be it by time or their employee hours, monetary, or just the use of their facility and their land. And so that we have to take into respect as presented to them, and having it end up being more than they realized they were getting into. We need to take into consideration what all the cost would be for us, the cost and the benefit. The biggest impact to our landfills, Commissioner Holtz, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's the large commercial projects. Those are the ones that make the biggest difference, the biggest impact, that affect the useful life of the landfill most. We also need to take into consideration if the county wants us to spend their taxpayer dollars in this effort, and if the impact from the effort will be easily measured. A lot of the numbers and math that you've presented to us is something that we, as stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, need to double check and refigure ourselves to make sure that they are valid. And so it's not something that perhaps we would want to enter into today. We want to consider right now, because there's a lot more work that needs to be put into it to validate everything on our part.
Sure. Well, respect you for doing that, and certainly that's not our thought that you would do that today without carefully looking at it for your stewardship. I think, though, as you look at it carefully, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Those are good, solid questions. You bring up, address the thing about funding, and in that proposal we've presented two what we believe are very viable resources for that. One that deals with the large commercial, the CID, or CB money, construction and destruction, C&D money, that's brought out there. So we feel like those figures are there for any possible revenue. I would like to say also, Commissioner Miller, that in the past, I guess you can attribute some of that to the downfall of the commodities, the downturn of commodities in the market. However, also we feel like that there's an efficiency factor there, and if things are efficiently done, and our history has, when we've operated on our own, we've operated in the black. So that in the black, and it's covered our expenses. So we'd be happy to provide you with that information.
Some of the other concerns, and Daniel's here, he can be able to answer that, was the availability of a forklift. I know we don't have one on site at the landfill, so it would have to be trammed in from wherever, and the size of that forklift. I don't know if you have a smaller forklift that can go inside a van trailer if we were to have a loading ramp, because that was part of the discussion that we had the other day, is being able to, part of the efficiency was having a loading dock that you could actually move all of the pallets, or what did you call them? the pallets, the Gaylord boxes into the trailer and be able to stack them too high. I don't think we have a forklift of that size at the county.
We got a small one, but it has to run on asphalt or concrete surfaces, and it doesn't handle drains very well. So the dock would have to be, trailer would have to go down below grade in order for that to go into the trailer, and don't climb a steep ramp with it. So,
Okay. So there are some issues with, and we talked about using pallet jacks and stuff to be able to move them back and forth in the trailer. I'm just bringing up some of the things that we talked about in that meeting. Okay.
Commissioner, there's a couple of other considerations. Obviously, as it talks about balers, and there's a considerable amount of equipment that goes into recycling, but also, and Christian, you can help with this, on a regular basis, we let the bids out for the metal, the salvageable metal, and your proposal ties part of this operation to that salvager in probably every commodity that there might be there. Sometimes those are 1 year, normally they're on an annual basis. I don't know if that changes the complexion of what we would need to do here, because would it work 1 year for one operator and not the second year? So we would need to look at our codes and our policy as far as how that person is selected, because in the past we've only had to deal with the metal salvage, which is the most valuable of all the commodity that's out there. It's what helps pay for that element. So I don't know if we can get locked into a long-term contractor with one unless we have the ability to adjust prices and or time frame that's in there. The other proposal of adding an assessment to the residents of the cities and the counties of even 50 cents per year, I'm not sure what that process would have to be, whether that's a referendum, whether it has to go through just the commissions and the councils, or if it has to, be put to a vote of the citizens. I know in several of the communities that I have looked at, including one where my son is that was the case, is that it was a referendum, that the community wanted to support that project, and by so doing, they put their money where their mouth was. So,
Certainly.
So those are a couple of the questions that I looked at on the financial side.
Good, and we've referenced to the previous survey that we did when we first began 8 years ago that showed 88% of the residents were in favor, those responding to the survey were in favor of recycling, supporting it. It's 72 of those, which was surprising, 72% of those were in favor of paying somewhere between $5 and $15 per month to support it. So I feel there's a strong element out there and in general very good support for recycling.
Right, and I think we have to make that effort for sure, because in surveys that I've been in tune with in this community or part of, sometimes we get 10, 15, 100 surveys, and those people that are not activists but active in that process or project are usually that handful that respond. And so really it does come down to, you need a much broader section if we're going to say that we can collect $50,000, $60,000 a year in something like that. I think we still have to look at what the general public says.
Yes, well, this survey was done by Delenn Fielding with the BEAR project, and it covered over 1,300 residents who responded to a survey that was sent out in their utility bills.
It'd be interesting to do it again.
It would. I say, just to recognize the difference in political climate from 8 years ago, things have drastically changed here in Carbon County. Just to note one difference, though that would be interesting to even propose that it be placed on a ballot or something of that nature, so that we could truly get a more complete census of what people would be willing to do.
Well, and that's fine. And we're quite positive that we would get a good result from that, and hopefully the political atmosphere is better than it was 8 years ago, right? So we're feeling very confident, and we also feel that is, these proposals were in there for financing where, if needed, because we feel like we can operate a good operation can run in the black. It might not make money, but it won't lose it. That's what we're saying. So, and then there are all the other benefits from recycling that come to the community and the county.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jim.
Can't there be any community, can we talk about it too, or is that it?
No, you're more than welcome to come up and speak to it. I guess it's the commission chair's decision, and I will allow it. Please come to the mic and state your name. Just for the record, just so that we can get it all on the
minutes
recording.
I just had a question, actually. I wondered, I'm Carrie Eichert. I'm a Carbon County resident for 28, 30 years. I just wanted Jim to tell us a little bit more, for those of us who are brand new to this process, what you're actually talking about proposing. You're saying taking those trailers where we put our Diet Coke cans in and having them go to the landfill? Is that what you're saying? I mean, simplify this process for me, because I kind of want to know what you're talking about. Because I thought I was showing up to see if we were going to build a recycling center at the landfill like they have in Moab, which is very progressive and very successful. So that's what I wanted to know. Yeah.
Well, I think what we've done in the past, Carrie, is we have had the Gaylord boxes, and we've taken the paper, largely paper, and then aluminum cans from those. The process is that we take them, use a forklift, put them in a semi truck. The company comes down, takes that semi up to a processing center where those materials, Salt Lake, and they're processed. That's what we have not had in the past, what you're semi taking place at the county. And that's what we're proposing, basically.
Okay. Yeah, I think,
and let me just step in front of you.
Can't help myself.
Hopefully, we have, visited all recycling centers. We're a member of the Recycling Coalition of Utah and the Utah Recycling Alliance, both those, and we in close contact with those people. We attend the sustainability conference in Weber State every year. So we work in concert with those people. We're well aware of what they've done, and we like to build with them and actually work with them, especially in rural communities in rural Utah, to get the best bang for our buck out of what's happening here. And we feel like that can happen.
Well, I feel, first of all, let's commend the Green Team for all the hard work they do, because coming into a community like this and saying, let's recycle, everybody will say, well, you're a tree hugger, you know? And I think that we need to be really aggressive and really progressive about doing anything we can to support what they're trying to do, because it's sort of going backwards Stone Age to say that we wouldn't support this. I just can't imagine why we wouldn't support it in any way possible. And partnerships, sure, we should do partnerships all over. It's not just the county's responsibility. It's all of our responsibility. And when you were saying 50 cents, I thought what was going to come out of your mouth is 50 cents a month. And you said 50 cents a year. I think that
It is a month.
I thought you said
$6 a year.
I thought I would pay, I already pay some sort of, what do we pay, $7 for garbage pickup or something? I don't know. Do you know that in Salt Lake, where my daughter recycles and does garbage, we don't fill our garbage can but once a month because we recycle. And I just think that it ties in with everything that we do. And I think to be a progressive community, which we see on the sign as you come into Price, it says a progressive, friendly community. This isn't progressive if we don't support what they're trying to do. We have to support it. And I think there's more. An 8-year-old survey is old. That's old. That they're not going to believe you. We do have to do something new and vibrant and uplifting, and it has to be done. We can't just sit here and say, well, there's not a forklift. We have to go for it. We have to start recycling in this community. That's my thinking. I don't know what the rest of my people think.
Okay. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having us all and allowing us to sit in.
What was your name?
My name is Catherine Cornelli. I am the new collections manager at the Prehistoric Museum. And I am a newbie, so I am not 20 years, 30 years in town. I'm new to Price, but I've been in Utah most of my life. And I was pretty shocked when I arrived in August to find out that there wasn't any recycling here. I've lived in a number of small towns, small communities where there's been no problem with recycling. At least cardboard, paper, some of the easier things to recycle, things that are more cost effective, like aluminum, much more cost effective to recycle it than to get it out of the ground in the first place, I'm sure we all know. And like I said, I was surprised not to see it. I did read about the Green Team trailers, and I've been taking my cans down, but then I heard that was all closing. So every month, I truck all of my recycling, all of my cardboard, cans, plastics, up to Salt Lake, where my parents live, and with my kid and my dog and my husband in the car, and we pile it high and we take it up there because they do it. So I just think it would be a really good idea so that I don't have to do that every month. My neighbors have lived here for a very long